I'm joined now by historian and author Habeeb Akande. He's live for us in London. Thanks so much for speaking to us. I just want to get your opinion first on the return of this Senegalese sword. Is it worth celebrating or actually criticizing because it's only on a 5-year loan?
I think it's worth celebrating, but to a point. I think it's an historic day, but it's not enough. I'm concerned that although this artifact has been returned to its rightful holders in Senegal, but it's on loan, so I'm questioning why is it on loan and why is it only given back for a 5-year period? And my question is, what about the other 90,000 artifacts that France holds, as well as other museums in Europe? So I think it's good. I think it's something that I'm reluctant to say that France should be praised for this act because they're returning something that doesn't rightfully belong to them. So they are doing the right thing, but I don't necessarily think they should be praised for doing what they should have done many years ago, because African heritage, as the French president said, African heritage can no longer be the prisoner of European museums.
Right.
Now, if that's the case and he's a man of his word, then what about the other artifacts? That's what I would ask the question.
But there's an argument that, countries like France will make that say Senegal and certain other countries don't actually have the means to store and protect what's actually for the greater good. That, first of all, when they're old, they need very particular and specific care and security, and that they also become our shared history. So some argue they're just better cared for and more accessible to more people if they're kept on display in museums in cities like Paris, for example. Do you think there's some merit to that?
No. Are we trying to say that Africans aren't able to look after their artifacts? I mean, to insinuate that it has to be a European city that has to look after and preserve these artifacts, I think that's doing a disservice to African cities. We've got, for example, Timbuktu, which has got thousands of artifacts before the Europeans plundered and stole a lot of these artifacts. I think we need to be honest with ourselves in the sense that even if the Europeans want to look after these artifacts, it should belong to the Africans, the people that they stole it from. If they want to look after it, that's fine, but that should be with the permission of the rightful holders. I don't think that saying that Europeans are the ones that should look after it because they've got the means, I think that's doing a disservice to many of our African brothers and sisters around the world.
Right. I mean, if you look at the museum in Paris, actually, the African Museum, some call it, that Jacques Chirac built. He spent absolutely millions, and this was a pet project of his because he insisted that he wanted to protect African history and culture as best he could, and again, make it accessible to as many people as possible. But do you think an alternative then would be to say, hey, why don't you contribute that money if you're so concerned, give the funding to the rightful owners, if you really are concerned about its preservation, so that arguably better facilities can be built in these artifacts' home territories?
Most definitely. And in addition to that, I would argue that the curators of the museums should be African people as well, because a number of the museums, both in France and in the UK, unfortunately, many of the curators and the people behind the museums aren't from the homeland. So I think not only is it I think it's important to get Africans involved if the Europeans are going to hold some of these artifacts, but they need to get Africans involved in terms of the curating process and also being partners. So I don't think it's right that Europeans are dictating to Africans, this is how we're going to preserve your tradition, which we stole, pillaged and plundered from your ancestors, and this is how we're going to share it with the rest of the world. I think that's something which the Africans, they themselves, should be in a position to make those decisions.
Habeeb Akande, thank you so much for joining us there from London. Greatly appreciate it.